a variety of data from the submission of required reporting by the 4D programs. OCSE provided this infographic for Kansas to show that in federal fiscal year 2019, the child support program was only behind Medicaid in the number of children served with 140,000 in Kansas, with 14.3 million children served nationwide. For every dollar spent on the program, $5.80 was collected by our Kansas program. Funding for the 4D program is shared by state and federal government, with the state paying 34% of administrative costs and the federal government paying 66%. However, each state has a maintenance of effort, which sets forth the minimum each state will spend on the program. In addition, incentive funds are available based upon performance, but any earned funds must be spent on the program. There are also financial penalties if minimum thresholds are not met. The Kansas 4D program is within the Department for Children and Families. We are a state-administered program and have a small state staff within DCF. The state office is responsible for all policy and procedure as well as oversight of the overall program. Our 6 contractors provide the day-to-day operations of the program as set forth in their contracts. 1 contract is for the Kansas Payment Center, 1 is for the statewide child support call center, and 4 full-service contractors provide the day-to-day operations. The Kansas Child Support Services, or 4D program, is open to anyone who enrolls for our services or is required to participate due to other benefit programs. The required programs are child care, TANF, Medicaid, food assistance, and foster care. The 4D program will either establish a parentage and/or support order for a child or enforce an existing order. We work with other 4D programs, state, territory, or tribal, as well as other countries, to assist families in order establishment and the collection of child support. Our program uses the Kansas Child Support Guidelines to recommend a realistic amount of child support based upon verified income for the parents at court hearings. The program has dedicated attorneys who represent the Secretary of DCF as their client. Once a support order is set by the court, our program works to find financial resources, usually through an employer, and collect the court order's support. We do face limitations as some parents are not findable or do not have a source of income or other financial resources that can be attached. Our program cannot guarantee the collection of court-ordered child support. In state fiscal year 2020, we had 129,489 cases open, serving 185,907 children in multiple programs, and established 4,870 new child support orders and established 1,310 legal parentage orders. Our call center representatives helped at least 272,090 live calls, of which 2% were employer-related, 57% were payee custodial parent-related, and 36% were pay or non-custodial parent, with the remaining 5% as other. Kansas Child Support is a unique service. In Kansas, a party usually meets the system for the first time when an order of the court instructs them to pay support, pay it to the Kansas Payment Center, and requires collection to be done by income withholding when possible. At that point in time, depending on a party's location in Kansas, they may receive government assistance through either the 4D agency, DCF, or a court trustee. Kansas established an option for judicial districts to choose to establish a court trustee office, which provides enforcement services after an order of support is in place. See KSA 20-377. Currently, there are 16 court trustees. Unfortunately, this means that not every judicial district has a court trustee in place. If the party chooses not to use government services, they proceed privately, either through the assistance of an attorney or representing themselves. Those cases that are assisted by DCF are 4D or non-4D, which is both the court trustee and privately represented cases. If a court determines that a case is not to be paid through the Kansas Payment Center, the parties are responsible for their own accounting and follow the directives that are given by the court. Each state is required to have a centralized state collection and disbursement unit, and the authority for ours is set out in Chapter 39 of the Kansas statutes. Both DCF and the Office of Judicial Administration have specific duties regarding the Kansas Payment Center. All cases are required to be paid through the Kansas Payment Center, complete paperwork that tells the KPC how to process any payment that is received. The KPC staff use that paperwork to set up the case on their system, receipt in and record received payments, receipts, and disperse payments to families, disbursements. In state fiscal year 2020, 2.1 million payments totaling $408.9 million were received at the KPC. Almost 2 million disbursements totaling $437 million were sent out to Kansas families, with 51% of those disbursements for 4D families. Each state child support operates differently within the federal parameters. In 1996, changes occurred to the program with the implementation of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996, PERORA, which implemented temporary assistance for needy family, TANF, and updated the requirements for TANF recipients to participate with the 4D program to receive benefits. Child support was identified as a long-term solution for children to receive financial stability. In 1998, Congress enacted the Child Support Performance and Incentive Act. A key provision was that the requirement that states meet performance standards to receive incentive funds. On the slides, you will see performance from federal fiscal year 2003, which we selected as a baseline year as the first reporting was in 2001. Federal fiscal year 2012 is the year before full service privatization. Federal fiscal year 2014 is the first fiscal year after privatization contracts. 2017 is halfway through the contracts. 2019 is the most recent federal year available for comparison on federal performance. And federal fiscal year 2020 is what Kansas reported in our annual report to OCSE in October 2020. There are 5 performance measures. Paternity establishment percentage. There are 2 options, 4D or statewide PEP. Kansas has elected to use statewide PEP. This measure compares the total number of children born out of wedlock in Kansas during the preceding year to the number of minor children who had parentage established or acknowledged in the fiscal year. Due to the criteria for the equation, it is possible to exceed 100%, which Kansas has done for the second time in federal fiscal year 2020. The second is support order establishment. This compares the number of cases that have a support order in place against the total 4D caseload. Kansas has shown improvement since 2012 and held steady in 2020. Current collections. This compares the amount of current support collected versus the total amount of child support owed in the 4D caseload. Kansas shows improvement from 2003, but this indicator is very much driven by the Kansas economy, and we acknowledge we dipped a bit in 2020, and we are monitoring to see if the trend continues or if we can hold steady. In federal fiscal year 19, the total child support due was $249,754,171. And in federal fiscal year 2020, it was $249,375,330. Arrearage collection. This compares the number of child support cases that made a payment towards an arrears balance versus the total number of cases in the 4D caseload that owe arrears. This indicator demonstrates how influenced arrearage collection is by outside events. As the numbers show, there was a significant increase this year, which we believe is directly tied to the impact of the first round of the economic impact payments offset by 4D child support programs. In federal fiscal year 2019, Kansas had 109,030 cases with arrears due, of which 63,701 made a payment totaling $842,713,642. In federal fiscal year 20, we had 103,018 cases with arrears due, of which 68,676 made a payment with a total due of total paid of the total arrears is $841,780,452. Cost effectiveness. This measures how much 4D child support dollars were collected versus how much was spent on 4D administration of the program. Kansas has held steady from 2002 in this measure. The line graph represents performance from federal fiscal year 2001, with the measures were first reported through federal fiscal year 2020. The chart reflects each year's performance. The heart of our program is the dedicated staff who ensure the daily operations. The snapshot of the 4D program occurs each September 30th and captures the number of staff in the program on that day, as well as the number of open cases. At the end of September 2020, we had 390 full-time equivalent staff and 126,571 open cases. In the years since we were last before this committee, much has happened in the child support world. Last year at this time, we had just begun an in-depth review of our program with an outside consultant. Just as our busy offset season began with tax offsets, we were pivoting to ensuring continuity of services to our customers, with our contractors determining quickly how to place their employees remotely while safely remaining open and adjusting to court closures, which delayed our needed hearings. In addition, genetic testing was delayed as that process was relooked at to determine how to continue the service in this unusual time. Internally, we bounced back quickly, and as our external partners returned, we continued to adjust to serve our Kansas child support community as effectively as we could. During the pandemic, Kansas Child Support has continued uninterrupted to receive and distribute child support through the Kansas Payment Center. The program has remained open at our call center and our offices, subject to local restrictions. Court hearings have continued per local procedure. The CARES Act greatly benefited our program and child support families with the first round of economic impact payments and enhanced unemployment benefits. But both brought unique challenges and have required extra resources. However, our overall performance remained steady and was boosted by the EIP and our arrears collections, returning the program's best performance in that category. We also completed many of our internal initiatives, notably publishing our policy manual, creating an email address for our CSS ombudsman for parties to reach a state employee with any concerns they are having, drafting a variety of frequently asked questions for the DCF website, and completing the independent evaluation of our program. In June 2020, CSS received the final report of our evaluator, Midwest Evaluation and Research, LLC. The top 3 recommendations made to us were the following. 1, maximize the potential of privatization contracts. 2, update the statewide computer system, cases. And 3, modernize the Kansas 4D program. Midwest suggested that Kansas do the following to maximize contracts. Identify what type of contractor's model works best, and in that there is the traditional caseworker model, a task-oriented model, similar to how DCF EAS operates, and a hybrid. Another suggestion was to increase the quality of service in the multi-agent environment through working to simplify the complex system that is seen as working against parents, and for the system to communicate better, both through more access points and a different approach through communication at both manager and service delivery. The statewide computer system is a central feature in the child support worker day. It is a repository for all our essential information and is literally the backbone of the program. Midwest strongly recommended that it be addressed with an appropriate technological solution. Midwest recommended CSS focus on identifying and removing barriers to internal and external customers. CSS needs to share more information with the public, current customers, potential customers, and other stakeholders such as employers, taxpayers, and the legislature. Kansas CSS needs to review other high-performing 4D programs and determine if the changes that worked for other states will work for us, and then take the necessary steps to make the changes. 6 months later, we are happy to update you on where the report directed us. First, in July 2020, a request for proposal for the replatforming of our statewide computer system was released. We are currently in the procurement phase of that process. Second, we are following the example of other 4D programs who have successfully moved their performance by focusing on data within their control. Our final phase to modernize the 4D program is a thorough review of our policy and procedure with an emphasis on data integrity. We are building capacity and updating our operations to ensure a standardized and similar experience is received statewide. Next, we will begin analyzing our data to ensure we are making data-driven decisions, both regarding policy and procedure, both by looking at what is happening in Kansas as well as other states. At the same time, we are working to enhance both the internal and external customer experience. At the forefront is building a communication strategy, both internally as well as externally, to ensure that we are an accessible but professional program. Third, we work regularly with our contractors regarding the daily operations. However, we have made the decision to issue an RFP and anticipate its posting by the Department of Administration in the near future. While 2020 was not an ideal year in many ways, the child support program showed its tenacity and willingness to pivot. We embraced the needed changes, showed our dedication to serve the families of Kansas, and are working to build the future of child support one step at a time. But that is not something we can do alone. As the Midwest report highlighted, that the 4D program serves 1 in 5 children, and more children and their families than any other human services program other than Medicaid and SNAP. However, what does serving a child in Kansas mean? Are we satisfied by comparing ourselves through the federal performance measures, or is there other data that Kansas wants to measure? Do we want all cases to be served by a child support professional? Do we want to remove the perception that income withholding order is not a good idea by championing mandatory electronic payments by all employers of a certain size? There are many opportunities to advance the child support program in the lives of Kansans who need the program. The 4D program exists because there was a need 45 years ago to assist children in financial security, and that need still exists.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We appreciate all your hard work on this, and we did have a presentation last year at this time, and what I told Secretary Howard this, and I told you this when I talked to you on the phone, we're not here to play gotcha or anything like this. We're here to help and make sure that you have the resources that you need to get this thing running at optimal performance. So with that, committee questions. Representative Donahoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. I just wanted to check on something. I understood you to say that for $1 spent, you collect $5?
At $5.80.
So that would seem to be there's a surplus. I don't understand what that's relating to, I guess.
We have a minimum amount that has to be set on spent on our program, and when they look at our total operations costs, they compare it overall to how much child support was collected, and that's where they get that equation.
But it says you're spending $1, but you're collecting $5.
Right, the government is spending $1. We have our operations, but we're actually sending out to families $5.80.
I'm just curious. I know that when we had problems at the border and everything, you know, and children were set aside, put aside, what happens to those children if they don't get back with their parents and they go into, do they go into the states, and would Kansas have any of those, or can they send them anywhere, or how does that?
That is not something for the child support program.
Okay, that's what I was curious.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Ballard.
I'm just looking at maternity establishment. When we give our statistics of born out of wedlock, and then we say paternity established by. I was asked this question probably in June, if I remember correctly. What if there are a couple that live together and everything, and they have a child? Do they come under that category of born out of wedlock, where, I mean,
Right.
because actually they are a family, they have a child, whether it's, you know, same couple or homogeneous or whatever. How do we then, are we referring to out of wedlock?
The Department of Vital Statistics is where we get our statistics. So however that child's birth is reported to them, it is what gets reported back to us. And they give us the number of out of wedlock births. So we'd have to go back and look. I mean, I'm assuming that if parties are not legally married, that would be an out of wedlock birth.
That's how this conversation came up.
But I would have to double check on that, and I can check with the vital statistics and
Yeah, because when they say
get back with you.
in most cases, this come up, we know who the father is, we know who the mother is, they choose not to be married, but they have this child. So is that out of wedlock because you know who they are? They're insured, there's everything else, but they just haven't done the legal things. So I just wonder, do we have a double explanation of out of wedlock? Does that mean that person there that doesn't have another partner in their life and they're raising this child by themselves, versus if it's a couple?
Okay, so your question is are a couple who is choosing to not be married reported as out of wedlock.
Yes.
Right. I'll find that out and let you know.
Committee, further questions? I have just a few. Could you get us that information, either electronically about arrearage?
Right, the arrearage amount that we are showing on the books as of the close of our federal fiscal year is, so the total arrears due at the end of federal fiscal year 20 was $841,780,452.
I'll remember that about 3 seconds.
Right?
If you'll get it to us in some kind of an email, I've already forgotten it.
Okay.
But, so, and we're going to get, it's going to get worse in here with numbers, so.
I
Sorry
will
about
get
that.
that sent to you.
I do believe that it's down about $40 million from last year's figures.
And it's down about $1 million.
Oh, is it a million? Okay.
We were 842.713 and we're at 841,780.
Okay, very good. Committee, further questions? Well, I thought this was very interesting, and I appreciate this report, this kind of, and if some of you read the 188 pages, there are some very cheap fixes in this program I'm sure you saw back in the back, and among those that were very high on the list that were very easy was communication. You know, I mean, you wouldn't think about that as being a big issue, but apparently from this report, that's a huge issue, communication between you guys and the collectors, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And so I would think that would be a pretty easy fix, so to speak, that wouldn't cost a lot of money. Just tell them either they communicate or they don't have a job, you know, type of situation. But anyway, I do think this is good, and I hope that you follow this through. I know you've got two of the things already working, and you're going out for RFPs for the contractors shortly. So I think it's very good, but I think we should probably do this for a lot of agencies, you know, just to get a snapshot of where you're at and how you can improve. So anyway, any other questions, committee? Well, thank you very much for being here, and we appreciate the update.
Thank you.
You guys are being kind of easy today, aren't you?
Don't get used to it, don't get used to it.
I won't. I won't. I'll take it. Any other things to come before the committee today? Any questions? Anything that we didn't cover? I think next week's agenda, you saw, we'll have a couple of, what are we going to have, two meetings, two informational hearings next week? Three. Okay. We'll have three informational hearings. We're just trying to get up to speed on a lot of things that were left over from last year and just kind of get moving here. Many of you may have, the governor's budget was out today. It'll take us about 2 weeks to get it from research. So by the end of the month, and it looks like we're going, February is going to be a very busy month in here. So, Owen, Representative Dono.
Thank you. I'm remembering back, we passed out to get $22 million last year added to the budget, right? 22 million.
Or
I don't remember exactly.
was it for the IDDD? Was
Yeah.
that the one? Yeah,
And then that was cut by the governor.
it was allotted. Uh-huh.
Is that back in there or anything?
It is.
You note it?
What I'll tell you is, the Kencare Oversight Committee, that was one of the recommendations, and that bill, that was a proviso for a one-year deal, but that bill has been introduced, and it is it's below the line, but that bill has been introduced.
Or it,
Yeah, it'll be a permanent, that was a proviso, so that was a one-year deal, but the official bill that requires 5% for the ID and DD, we'll be working on it, and hopefully we'll get it in law this year. So if that happens, there won't be any allotments, it'll be in statute. So, anyway. Representative Helmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When does, just coming from education and high school and college, when do students in high school and college, seeing the huge amount of teen pregnancy, when are they held accountable, at what age, for child support teen pregnancy, at what age? And how much of what you're talking about is that accountability, that amount? Just a wild guesstimate.
I can't give you a guesstimate of how many teen parents we have paying child support. The guidelines, the child support guidelines are set up to, for the courts to be able to set an appropriate child support amount no matter what age the parents are. Everybody's circumstances are unique, especially at that age. But that is not a statistic that we track.
So it's not added into what you're talking
If
about?
there's a court order for a teen parent to pay, it's part of our overall, but I don't have a statistic to say, for example, we have 100 teen parents ordered to pay child support.
Okay.
I don't have that information, and I've never searched for that information, so I don't know how readily we could find that answer. We can try, if that is a request of the committee.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Donahoe, and
on the same note, can the individual be a dependent and have the parents, would the parents be forced to pay? Or if they have a child, are they no longer under that category, even though they're young, as a dependent?
What I'm hearing from you is this, I think this is the question that you have. You have a parent who's 30, who has a child who's 15. The 15-year-old becomes a parent of a grandchild who's zero. The 30-year-old parent will still owe a child support obligation on the 15-year-old until that 15-year-old is emancipated. The 15-year-old will owe a child support obligation on the new baby. Okay. And that's subject to a court order establishing those orders.
Representative Ballard.
I think that explains it, because that was the way it was explained to me. That's what I was going to ask, that when you're 18, then you are responsible for the child care if you're independent, because they consider you grown or not.
Well, how the guidelines are set up is that you can be held responsible at whatever age you are, but again, that's at a court making that order and determining that you're responsible to pay child support. And those are all determined by the local court as to how that order is going to be paid. There are provisions in the child support guidelines that they could set an order for a minor parent.
But would they hold a 14-year-old responsible,
an order can be established. Each of those cases is unique, and, you know, it depends on the circumstances, you know, what happens in those those cases.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, any further questions? One thing, I did speak with Elizabeth earlier today, and last year's, this is from a guy that throws nothing away. Last year's had some reports as far as Kansas ranking, and you were not able to get those off of the federal website. Is that?
No,
How did that work?
our resources have been diverted for the various projects that we've been working on, and so we hadn't finalized a report like we did last year with the various rankings yet, and so I didn't have that available this afternoon. We can get that prepared into the committee. I just didn't have it this afternoon.
Very good. I think that would help us understand a little bit more about where we're at in the rankings.
Okay.
Okay, committee, thank you again for being here, and appreciate all your answers and questions and everything. Committee, any further questions? Last call. All right. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.